talk show is brought to you by...
Hey, want to feel young again? Are you tired, run down, have aches and pains, brain fog? This is science-based, not hype or fancy marketing. It really works. Carbon 60 helps detoxify your body on the cellular level. It stabilizes free radicals, just like the antioxidants found in red wine and berry stew, but on a far smaller, more bioavailable nanoscale. It's like a bottle of electrons, helping your body to function better. You can also apply it on your skin topically, over muscles, joints, or organs. Most people feel results within minutes. This is not a drug. It's organic carbon. Feel better today. About 95% of our users report more energy and clarity of mind within 10 days. Give us a call at Greska's Carbon 60 at 720-600-6040 or visit our site at c-60.com. Call 720-600-6040 and feel young again.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, the FinFab channel, the NBC network, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, awesome show, a show that can give you hope, a show that will give you motivation and inspiration, a show that may change your life, and a show for some people that can actually give them advice on how to deal with a particular, medical condition. And we'll talk about all that. And so with me today is someone who actually is an author. She's a rare illness advocate. She's a survivor, and she's gone through tough times, and yet she was able to manage and break through the whole thing. And not only that, now she is all over social media. She is writing her book, and she is really helping others through advocacy. So again, I'm being a little bit, as always, suspenseful. So without any further ado, I have with me Holly Francis, and she is definitely gonna guide us through a whole different experience of hers first. So Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Hurricane, for having me on.
Well, it is true pleasure, and I when I read about your story, it's just a must to have on the network, because a lot of people go through a lot of different things, and some, we all have level where we think that our case is the worst case until we hear the other story. And then sometimes we say that it's hopeless, and until we hear the stories of others, and then we build that hope. And hopefully today, literally, I mean, no pun intended, we can give that hope back to a lot of folks out there, and whatever their conditions may be. Now Holly, let's take us to your story and your actual, deal with GBS. Now, I'm not even going to give it a shot. As we talked about, you're going to have to bring that GBS to us. For those of you who might know what it is, I mean, I can read it in French, and I just cannot read it the way it sounds. So Holly, write us through that one. Give us that whole concept of what happened and what it is, and then what was the symptoms, the whole thing, and then the experience itself.
Sounds good. So this all happened back in 2011. So I was 26 years old at the time, and I was completely healthy. I had a great career. I was newly married, and I'd actually just given birth to my daughter. So I had a wonderful 9-month pregnancy. Was really looking forward to my future and being a mom and just creating all these new memories and starting this new chapter of my life. And so it was a really, really exciting and happy time in my life. And, you have your whole life planned, but sometimes life has a different plan for you. And that's what happened with me. And so I was at home recovering from a C-section. I had a C-section with my daughter 3 weeks prior, and I was at home and, just adjusting to life as a new mom. And it was tough breastfeeding and getting up in the middle of the night. But I loved it. And I was just, like I said, just really, really happy. But then suddenly I got this weird pain in my neck. So that was one of my first symptoms that I had. And at the time I thought it was just like a pinched nerve or something like that. Later I got some tingling in my fingertips. I kind of just ignored that. And then later that night, it progressed to kind of weakness in my legs. So it kind of felt like I was getting the flu. And I was walking up the stairs, and I remember thinking, I'm really tired and I'm really drained. and my legs feel really heavy, and thought that I was just getting sick. And I also thought, I'm probably just really tired, need a good night's sleep. And especially me, I'd been healthy my entire life, so I certainly didn't think it would be anything serious. Now, unfortunately, everything really progressed very quickly. And within a few hours after that, the pain was so severe that I was in tears, and I was taking pain medication and it wasn't helping. And I'm going on Google and I'm Googling like these symptoms, and it's saying I have a pinched nerve, because that's what you do when you have symptoms, right? You Google, yeah, WebMD, exactly. So of course that's what it says. I have a pinched nerve, and so I'm trying to ignore it, and I'm trying to do massages and stretches, and nothing's helping. I go to bed that night trying to ignore it, and my daughter actually woke up in the middle of the night to nurse, and when I stood up to go to her, my legs actually gave out on me, and so I fell to the floor. And it was then that I knew that it was much more severe than a pinched nerve, or maybe it was a pinched nerve, but it was very serious. It was affecting my ability to walk, basically. So I went to the hospital. I had my ex-husband now, I had him drop me off, and I said, I don't want my newborn coming in with me. Just come back in a couple hours. I'll call you once I'm ready. And unfortunately, things progressed so quickly that within 12 hours of arriving at the hospital, I was completely paralyzed, breathing on a ventilator in the ICU. That's how quickly it came on.
What? Ooh, that's ventilator. I mean, I got the paralysis piece, but the ventilator. I mean, so the whole body was not functioning. This is not just the
Yeah.
extremities.
Yeah. So basically what happened, so once I went into the hospital, I was lucky that I saw a doctor that he admitted, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'm going to try and find somebody that might. He noted that I was very weak and I was losing grip strength and I was losing the ability to walk. And he brought down a neurologist to come meet me. And the neurologist, again, very lucky that he had seen a case of GBS before. And he said, I think you have this rare disease called Guillain-Barre syndrome. And I remember just looking at him going like, I don't know what that is. I've never heard of that. Most people have never heard of GBS. And so what it is it's a rare autoimmune disorder, and it's very similar to multiple sclerosis. So a lot of people know what MS is, yeah. And MS is affecting the basically the brain and the spinal cord. And GBS is very similar, but it basically affects the nerves in the body. And so your immune system sees an attack on the body, and then it sends out your immune system to basically, attack or fight whatever it sees. And the body then begins to attack itself in GBS. And so that's what was happening to me. It started to attack the nerves, and basically it stopped my body from being able to transmit signals and causing weakness and eventually paralysis. So the paralysis for me spread so quickly. Within 72 hours of my very first symptom, it spread all the way up my diaphragm and affected my lungs and basically paralyzed my diaphragm. So it affected my ability to breathe on my own. And so that was when I was rushed to ICU, put a tube in my mouth, and basically on my deathbed, not sure if I was going to survive.
I mean, I'm just listening to you. It's a horror story. I mean, it's not something you said plenty of things there that we can just at least expand on right now. I mean, the first part is here you are in the top, live with all the hopes and dreams, a new baby born, and all the excitement that someone really looks forward to in life. And this happens sudden, and so we shouldn't be taking life for granted. We got to take care of ourselves. And even when you do that, you never know. Life throws in some real weird stuff at us as part of a test here, I guess. And, sometimes it's very difficult to come back from it, but, it takes a lot of resilience and things. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the other part that you mentioned is that you felt the symptoms of the numbness and stuff, but you ignore it. You ignored those signals. Now, I think if everybody is watching and listening, we all had some level of pain at a point or another, and we'd say, nah, it's nothing. Now, luckily, for the most part, it's nothing, but you never know. And I think one of the messages I think that we can really highlight here is that when it's not right, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't, it pays to actually go pay a visit to a doctor, check it out, see what's
Absolutely.
going on. Don't let it, again, I don't know if that in your case would have made a difference if you went 3 days before, whatever, maybe.
It would
uh
have, yeah.
it would have. Okay, there you go. So but
Yeah.
that, yeah, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so basically, with GBS, the sooner that you can get on treatment, basically you get something called IVIG or plasmapheresis, which is basically like a blood transfusion. And so the sooner you can get that, the better your outcome is. So for me, I was very fortunate that I was diagnosed so quickly, and that doesn't always happen with GBS patients. Some people go in, and especially if the weakness is not very obvious for other people yet, it feels obvious to the person, but you might not be able to see that they're struggling to walk. And so, if a doctor, it happens, doctors may not think that anything's wrong and they'll actually send them home, which can be detrimental to somebody's recovery. Absolutely.
Well, we always say prevention, right? Preventative
Yeah.
measures, and don't delay. Early detection is the key. And so all those words and terms we've always heard. I mean, you really demonstrate the need for them today to all of us again, or at least reiterate them, because we tend to feel like we're, I guess, really, very strong, tough, and nothing can phase us, and we are very weak as a human nature. Literally, a little bug, something in the system that
Hmm.
goes off, and then everything stops. I mean, really, that's all there is, right? And
Absolutely.
by the way, I know that you're lucky, because not every ER would have someone who would have the expertise that you were able to get in that day, and to have a neurologist specifically in there, that may not even be something that you'll come across in most of the hospitals, in the States,
Absolutely.
or worldwide. I mean, this show is worldwide. So, I mean, some places they don't even probably know what that is. I mean, as an actual diagnosis. And I'm not downplaying, the medicine around the world, but, we tend to have some of the top ones. But even here in the States, you're going to have difficulty really discovering what that is. And you said it. I mean, if the symptoms are not, and what you described also can be many things. And by the way, I
Exactly.
can tell you, my dad, I mean, he was 73, and he his diagnosis was completely off. It was different. I mean, it was terminal. It was something else. But believe it or not, that's exactly what happened to him.
Hmm.
Towards he felt numb. We didn't know what it was. It was cool. He still flew away overseas. And then when he got there, he started not walking. And next thing he was paralyzed. Now,
Oh,
later on, we found out that he had, I mean, stage 4 cancer, whatever. But that same symptom picture that you were describing, I
hmm.
remember going through that same phase, except it was a whole different,
Yeah.
way of going. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can probably have other similar, like you said, MS is got a similar thing, which does actually impact the extremities, and sometimes paralysis is part of the outcome. So the idea is, like everything else, being ahead of the game. The minute you feel not wrong about something, don't delay it. Don't think that it's nothing. Guess what? Vet it out. If it's nothing, it's nothing. But if it's something,
Exactly.
you caught it early enough, therefore you have a better shot than most, right? And but so we are glad. I am glad that you're here, and that you're with your daughter now and taking care of her, and but I also have to say that was a very tough place for you to be as a mother. I can just imagine the level of stress that you would have gone through at that point. The mental status, would have been very difficult for you, because here you are facing this, that you probably said it. I mean, it was almost death, ahead of you, and you did not know that you will be coming back from it. And then you just, I'm sure that in your mind, like, well, who's going to take care of my daughter and stuff, and all these things, my career, all these things at that time would have been something you've, experienced. Would you be able to share some of that level? I mean, if you do recall any of that, because that's, I think it's important for people to at least, link up to, and really relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. So the funny thing is that a lot of people think that when you're in ICU, or at least when you have GBS and you're in ICU and you're on a ventilator, that you're sedated and you're in a coma and you don't remember things. And a lot of people ask, "Oh, do you remember ICU?" And unfortunately, I do. I remember every single detail. I was very coherent. I was on a lot of medication, but I remember everything that happened, and it was quite horrific. I was in a lot of pain. The nerve pain that I was dealing with was basically inflammation of every part of my nerves. So It felt like I had the most severe flu. It felt like whenever anybody touched me, it felt like somebody was stabbing me. It was just horrific. And I was on the strongest medication that I could possibly be on. But still awake and still knowing what was happening. And so I knew that my daughter was my newborn was there, and I knew that I couldn't be her mom. And she was only 3 weeks old. I'd barely gotten to do anything with her. We were supposed to be going to mommy and me classes, and we were going to take her for her first walk in her stroller. And I didn't get to do any of that. And so it was just like I had no idea what my future looked like. I had no idea if I was going to even survive. I didn't know if I would ever get to being her mom. And so I was quite broken for a very long time, that I was just devastated and felt robbed of my life, and felt like there was just no hope for me to keep fighting. But the doctors kept telling me, you have to keep fighting. You have to keep moving forward. But it was very, very hard in those dark, dark moments.
It's hard to hear. I mean, just the idea of going through this, and here's the thing: you said it very clearly that you were not, and in a coma state, you were actually awake. So yes, you had the ventilators, you had all the sedation and stuff to keep you cool and less pain, in pain. But your mind was working. You're still conscious. I mean, in coma, you're probably not conscious, and I think that's the real diagnosis for it. But you were really awake, but you're there, but you're not there. Physically, you're just sitting there or like laying there, but the mind is firing, in all synapses. Everything was working. And so it's double pain. You not only have that emotional pain and mental status pain is there, but you also have all that body stuff that was affected. And you mentioned something very interesting, because then any one of us who's experienced any level of pain, whether it's a headache or you hit yourself somewhere, whatever, it's painful. Your description is that the whole body was in pain. I mean, that's like having torture all over, like you're being fried alive. I mean, just thinking about that, it's like it's unimaginable. And it's one way for you to say it now, because I don't think words can describe exactly what you were going through. You're doing the best you can do, but just thinking about it, it gives me actually the jeepers here. Or it's really difficult to even comprehend the magnitude of pain you were going through. So again, my heart is to all people that are going out there, with any type of pain, because it's not fun. I mean, you get just as basic for ladies, menses can be very, bad. A bad headache and migraines can be bad. But what you had is like, 100-fold, that pain, or even more. I mean, I don't think there is if we were saying from 0 to 10, you're like, 100.
That's pretty much what I had. They would ask me what my pain levels were, and that's what I would say. Like at 100, it was just out of this world. And I was also dealing with a lot of nausea and vomiting, because I was on so many different medications. And so I just felt awful all the time. I was on the ventilator, which was terrifying, because it constantly felt like I was underwater, about to run out of air. Every breath was very forced and felt like it was unnatural, and felt like I wasn't going to be able to breathe. And so there was this constant fear and anxiety that I was going to die at any moment. And then there was the intense depression that, I'm never going to get back to my life. I'm never going to get out of here. I'm never going to get to be the mom that I wanted to be. And it was a long journey out of that hole. And I spent almost 3 months in ICU, in that dark place.
I was going to ask, how long was that actually? That's just the ICU. Then there's more.
Yeah.
I mean, so from the minute you went in, 3 months out, you were all in the ICU.
Almost 3 months. Yeah. Yeah. So
plugged in with the stuff in and all that, and feeding you to IV and all this stuff.
Yeah, I had basically a tube in my stomach. That's how I was fed. I had first, the tube was in my mouth. The ventilator tube was in my mouth, but it was later moved to my throat through a tracheotomy tube. And so I was able to mouth words, and that's how I communicated, or else through my family would basically point to letters on a communication board, and they would spell out sentences that I wanted them to use. But other than that, I couldn't speak for almost 3 months. And my daughter was there every single day with me, which was incredible and heartbreaking at the same time. So it was amazing that she could be there, and they put her on my chest every day, and she was by my bedside, and we wanted to, keep that connection and that bond going. And I like to think that she knew who I was. I mean, she would like stare at me, and she was just really into to watching everything that was going on in the room. But it was also heartbreaking because she was growing up before me. Like, she was getting bigger as the days went on and as the weeks went on. And I missed her first smile, and I was missing all these things that she was doing at home. And so it was really, really tough to not know if I was ever going to be able to see her grow up, if I was going to ever get to do all these things that I had wanted to do with her. But as time went on, I did get better. So the paralysis started to fade actually before the 3 months. It was about 6 weeks in, actually. And it faded back where it started. So my fingers, and then it gradually kind of moved up and down my body, and I could start to move my hand, and then I could move my arm, and then I had to learn how to breathe on my own. So getting off the ventilator was definitely the hardest part of my journey. And that was where I had to practice off the ventilator for 20 or 30 seconds at a time. And I remember it felt so impossible. Again, it felt like I was underwater and I was about to drown. And I remember I would beg my doctors to put me back on the ventilator, and they would, and they'd say, okay, you have to last 72 hours before you can get off the ventilator. And I would just break down in hysterics because I would be like, I did 15, 30 seconds and I could barely do it. How am I going to last 72 hours? But I was very fortunate that the doctors, they knew how tough this was, and they knew that I was losing hope. And they actually found another GBS survivor to come to the hospital to visit me. And he brought me this sign, and it was like the sign that one of his nurses had made for him when he was in the hospital. And he had completely recovered, and he put it on my wall. And it was this quote that said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at day's end saying, I will try again tomorrow." And I remember at that moment just being like, you know what, I can always try again tomorrow. And so that's what I did. Even though it was hard, even though I often didn't believe I was going to get there, I just promised myself I would keep going and I would keep trying again tomorrow. And gradually, as the weeks went by, I was able to breathe on my own, got off the ventilator, and got out of ICU.
Well, first of all, from this platform, we want to commend, that particular person that came in and gave you that, because I'm sure it had to play with your hope and your really, ability to survive through this and go through it. And also the fact that you had your daughter come in to see you every day and be there with you, I'm sure that was like, you were fighting to make it through. And that's the other thing. I mean, if you had probably no one come in, whatever, you might have a different outcome because you would have lost hope and that there's nothing for you to look forward to. But you had that ability, and you see that I'm going to do whatever. Your mind is stronger than people think. And so it does have a play. And again, you also got very lucky to have a set of doctors that were able to really work with you and got you through this. Now, I'm going to ask some of the obvious questions in terms of the clinical aspect of it. Was there any, once you went through this process and you talked to the doctor, because I know initially it was quick, you were in, you didn't have time to absorb all this or know exactly everything. I mean, it happened. You probably, all this stuff was told to you a little later, when you were coherent and aware. Now, was there anything that they told you that could have potentially prevented this, or this is something that may be genetic, that there was no way for you, it would have happened no matter what? Because sometimes we think about food, we think about maybe practice, behaviors, whatever.
Yeah, it's so hard to say. So GBS, like I said, it's an autoimmune disorder. So it typically will come on 2 to 4 weeks after some sort of event that happens to your body. So that really can be anything. There are many, many, many things that can trigger an autoimmune, or that can trigger an immune response, right? I mean, the common cold, the flu, getting a tattoo, eating raw chicken. There's so many different things that, your immune system is fighting off on a daily basis. But with GBS, it's some sort of common event or astronomical event that it sees, and it begins fighting. And so for me, when we base it on the timeline, based on when I gave birth to my daughter, that's what they believe was my trigger. And I have seen many, many cases since obviously recovering from GBS and meeting other GBS survivors and meeting other women. It is common after giving birth or after being pregnant or after having a C-section, because it's such a traumatic experience on the body. And so for me, that was the timeline.
Listen, I mean, cesarean or C-section is not anytime you go through surgery, it's not fun.
Mhm.
And sometimes, and by the way, I've seen this happen, and I hate to say it this way, but I am in the insurance space and the healthcare, and even with my wife, believe it or not, when she was pregnant the first time, she went to this doctor, and this doctor only did C-sections, literally. And so that's the only way he would deliver. Now from a financial perspective, C-sections make more money, and so and unfortunately, it's doesn't sound very ethical that that's the only way you do, and you tell people that you can, then we're going to do it this way. And then we had a different doctor who chose otherwise, and she never did. And so again, just for women out there, don't just settle for C-section because unless you have no choice. That's a last resort. I mean, someone can say, well, what the hell, Hurricane? Well, I'm telling you, I've had a couple of kids, and we went through the whole process, but it could have been very easy. Yeah, we're gonna book a date and stuff. But anytime you go to a surgery, there's always a risk. There's blood clots, there is anesthesia, there's things that can happen, and you never know what that and again, it could trigger something big as what we're talking about today. You don't know. So if you don't have to, don't do it. Get your options. I mean, give it till the last minute. I mean, trust me, if the baby is not being delivered and they see that you have to go through C-section, that will make you do it anyways. But that will be a last resort, not the choice that you plan for. Yeah. Sometimes I think about, like, why would people even plan that? Like, we're going to have a birthday on this day and we're going to do it.
Yeah,
It's a choice. I mean, it's like telling someone, let's cut you and see what happens, That's not a nice option. But again, I'm trying to make some light of this, but it is a serious thing, and
absolutely.
But again, you didn't plan for it. You had no choice. You had
no, it just happened. But I mean, surgery is a common trigger of GBS, whether it's pregnancy related or not. And many other things can cause it too. The most common trigger for GBS is influenza, actually. So the common flu. So typically, 2 to 4 weeks after someone having the flu, GBS can come on. Another common one is the Campylobacter bacteria, which is found in undercooked chicken. So interesting that, if you get food poisoning, that can trigger a case of GBS. It's also really common after vaccines. And we've seen it a lot with caffeine. I won't go there, but
I'm just joking.
It's on the brochure. Guillain-Barre syndrome is a side effect.
I was just fine because you mentioned the word that goes crazy, so everybody goes nuts about it. But you're right. I mean, thank you for sharing, because it's important to realize. I mean, we have to have some fun as well. But really, it's these things that you mentioned. I mean, events that do happen, and again, you are putting bodies into things that are maybe not normal, and the body is going to do what it's supposed to do. It just attacks whatever it is. Now, if it happens to attack the wrong space, that's where the problem happened. And if it goes to your nerve system, you're done. I mean, we are basically motor, the motor functions are all coming in through those wirings, and the wirings are basically those nerves. And if they're not sending the message, it's over. I mean, that's all there is. As a matter of fact, when I went with my dad, to the doctor, and I was trying to get him back to walk, right? I mean, we didn't, at the time we knew, but we still had hope. You always have hope. And I went to a specialist, and he literally showed me his MRI and all the stuff in the back. And he says, even if we did surgery, even if we did everything, he might have some sensation, but he would never walk again, because the nerves, the whole spine, was pretty much, stopped. So there was no connection really. And that resonates with the concept of neurology and how it all works. I mean, it basically, you cut the cable, and there's no more, current going down there, and that's the end of it. So that's how it is. So it's very difficult. So now you finished, your 3 months, and I'm sure you had a whole rehab phase that you had to get back. I mean, you had the breathing part, but then what was the next steps, for you, for at least people that are watching or listening right now, what this is. And obviously prevention, to your point, let's don't eat raw stuff, and do the best that you can to stay, healthy, avoid surgery if you can, and all these things. But really, if this happens, God forbid, the rehab portion is always an interesting part, and it's a very difficult one and long journey as well, because I don't think that's just 3 months. There's more.
No, yeah, it was absolutely quite a while. And basically, when I got out of ICU, I felt like my life had started over. I felt like I was given another chance. I had been so sick and ill and in so much pain in ICU, and just really losing hope about whether I had a future or not. And then when I got out of ICU, I realized, you know what, we are so much stronger than we realize as human beings, and we can overcome really hard times. And I'd done that. And so it kind of just sparked this fire in me to keep going and to keep fighting. And so I started rehab. I moved to a rehab hospital, and I was very, very weak. So, I mean, I was like a newborn baby. I was with my daughter learning how to do things. So I had to learn how to hold cutlery and how to feed myself and how to drink from a cup. And I had to re-strengthen every part of my body again to be able to use the different parts of my body. So I lost over 30 pounds of muscle mass in the hospital. And so I had to regain all that back. So it was like intense workouts every single day, just focusing on regaining that muscle and that muscle mind connection. And it was intense. And I eventually learned how to stand. That was the first thing I did. I got out of bed and I was able to stand beside the bed. For 15 seconds at a time. I was so weak that I could barely even hang on. And then I had to sit back down. And eventually I had to learn how to walk. And again, that was another really, really tough part of my journey that I worried, am I ever going to be able to get out of this wheelchair? So I was in a wheelchair for quite a while, several months, which was a whole different journey that, you don't really realize what it's like to be in a wheelchair until you're in one. And I was in the hospital still at that time, and just, trying to get back to my life, just trying to get out of there, doing everything that I could. And eventually I was able to really push hard in physiotherapy and re-strengthen those legs, and I was able to walk again.
So I have to ask this. What was the reaction of your daughter when she saw you standing again?
Well, she was just so little, right? So she would have only been, by that point, she would have been about 5 months old, right? So, but she was such a huge motivation for me, because it was like, you know what, like, she's going to have to do this probably in a year or so. She's going to have to learn how to walk again. And she's going to do it probably with a smile on her face, and she's going to be laughing and all this. And for me, it wasn't like that. It was so hard and challenging. And I did it with tears in my eyes. And it was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And just seeing her was motivation enough to be, like, you know what? Babies do it all the time. Babies learn how to walk and they just get back right up and they don't care and they don't have any fear about it. And so I had to just do the exact same thing.
It was your inspiration and hope. And by the way, hope is dangerous, right? I mean, I think, what was that, The Hunger Game? And I think there was a comment there, like, you don't give people hope, because that's a strong, pill to give people that can current, I guess government or whatever. But hope is powerful. And when you have that, when you build that, and you have a target that you really want to make it and survive through, it's very powerful, and it gives the mind all the energy that it needs, and the motivation to push forward. And you did. And by the way, you're downplaying, you say it, I mean, in words. And again, words are not as, I know, words are powerful, but a picture is, worth 1,000 words. And I'm sure if someone has seen you in the condition you were, they will know what that meant. It's not a picnic. I mean, we see it in movies, but it's dramatization. It's not really what it is. But in real time, it's tough. And again, you're right. You're looking at your daughter. I mean, when I asked the question, I was more hoping, like, was there, like, you were in bed, and then all of a sudden, like, she's probably, smirking, having big eyes, googly,
she was,
those things, kids giggle, right? And they have different emotion, well, different ways to, I guess, to share their emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first took my first steps and I walked basically these two metal parallel bars that I had to walk, and my mom was there, of course, and she had my daughter in her arms, and she was at the end and she was cheering me on, and it was just surreal, right? To be learning how to walk and my mom there helping me as if I was a 1 year old again. So it was just incredible. And like you said, when you have that hope, that whatever that dream is, and for me that goal was to walk before my daughter would. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to walk
Be
and
there.
be able to help her when she learned how to walk.
That's sweet. And by the way, we talked about your daughter and you, but your mom. I mean, as a parent, I mean, I'm sure she was devastated too to see her daughter in that position and potentially losing her daughter. I'm sure. So that's another person that sometimes we don't talk about it in shows like this, but your parents are also they're always going to be your parents, and they're going to always worry, and until the last breath they're going to have that. So going through that experience, I'm sure that was devastating for her too. And I'm not sure if that was there, but
Yes.
anyone at that point would have been a difficult place for them to be.
Hmm.
I can just imagine the pain that they would have, and sorrow and everything. And but I'm sure they talk to doctors, and doctors sometimes, and doctors cannot guarantee. That's the other thing. No one can say we don't know. It's looking good. That's probably going to be, and so that keeps them just hanging. It's not going to give them the real. You want to get like concrete results. Oh, she's almost going
Exactly.
to be done. She's good, but you're not going to get that because
Yeah,
they can't guarantee any. Unfortunately, because of everything that goes on in malpractice and stuff, no doctor will ever say, we can guarantee
exactly.
she's going to be good
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
And that's what people want to hear, though. That you want to hear
Mm,
that, but unfortunately, we can't. So again,
yeah.
we're just setting the expectation, folks, that this is the reality of life we're in today. And it's tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, my family was there and I was very fortunate that, it affects, like you said, it affects so many more people than just the person that's in the hospital bed. It affects all the family members and all that. And so the support system was so important. And I was lucky that I had wonderful doctors and who told me, you can recover from this disease. So GBS, even though it's quite rare. It only affects about like 1 to 2 out of every 100,000 people, which, I mean, when you think of it of the size of like a city, it still affects a large amount of people
Oh, no,
every
it's a
year.
number.
Yeah, but when you're going through it, you feel so alone and you feel like there can't possibly be anyone that understands what I'm going through. And so finding those other supports is so important. And that's whether you're going through GBS or another disease or any issue in life. If you're going through any struggle, you got to find those people that are going through what you're going through or who've already overcome what you're going through, because those are the people that are going to help get you out.
So a couple of questions, technical questions. I know you spend a lot of time in the hospital, and ICU is expensive. I'm just wondering. I know you probably had insurance, which is a good thing, but I'm sure there's deductible and stuff. Do you know what the cost was for your time, your stay?
So I'm actually Canadian, so we
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess rub it in, right? So
so
if that,
I
yeah,
did not, yeah, I did not see a bill, so I don't know. I do know that the treatment that I have, which was a 5-day treatment, cost $10,000 each treatment. And so that was that'd probably be about 15,000 Canadian, or I mean, American. And that was over 5 days. So that was just the medical treatment that I had, and that was just the first 5 days. So I
I can
can't
tell
even
you,
imagine.
if this was in the States, this probably would have cost me at least, I mean, very modestly, half a million to
Yeah,
$1 million in terms of the stay, the equipment, the medications, all that. I
yeah.
mean, even with insurance, you probably, I mean, probably not. It's very difficult, and I had to ask because that is one of the biggest thing in healthcare. I mean, Canada is definitely much better than the US in terms of that. I mean, obviously, you guys pay a lot of taxes to cover for
Hmm.
that. And by the way, this is a good thing to talk about because most people think that in Canada, if because it's just public health, if you want to call it that way, you don't get the best of the best treatment and doctors. And here we are with you. You didn't go to specialize, private. You went to the system and you were able to
Hmm.
actually still get a good and great service and got yourself through. Which again, kudos to those doctors and the folks that were there for you.
Yeah, I did. I consider myself very lucky that I was in Canada and able to get the help that I needed, and obviously it covered financially. But there are a lot of horror stories and sad stories out there of people that don't get the same treatment, even within Canada. I mean, as a 26-year-old, they had a lot of hope for me and they were fighting for me. But, GBS affects people of all ages. And it's so heartbreaking to see that sometimes, if it's a 50, 60, 70-year-old, they just kind of
Done.
write them off. They just think, like we're not even going to really try. And they may not give that person hope, and they may not give that person much level of care. But for me, I was lucky that I had a heart-wrenching story. I had a newborn there. And so everybody was fighting for me right alongside with me.
Again, you're very fortunate, and
Mhm.
listen, we hear stories about guardian angels. We hear stories about that it's not time. We hear stories about and whatever beliefs we have some sort of level of story that talks about your situation. And in my world, you are still meant to deliver in this world, and actually, and you have a legacy to keep, and you're doing that. I mean, through this show and multiples, and the book that we're about to talk about, and this story of yours happened, but it happened where you took it to the next level, where now you share it and you take it on the road to hopefully give hope again to the other
Mhm.
folks that to as you said, maybe they may not have that from a different source, but they'll get that from your work that you're doing right now. So now let's talk about, fast forward, how long was it really for you to actually be off and be like completely, were you actually able to be fully physically ready for your daughter's first steps?
I was, yeah. I was able to help her walk and all that. I walked her to the first day of school and everything. So it was about a year and a half, I would say, before I considered myself back to normal, as close as normal as I think I could ever get. I was able to do everything that I was doing before, other than I would get tired really easily. So if I walked up a lot of stairs, my legs would kind of feel weak by the top. I was fatigued a lot quicker. So if I pushed myself too hard, I would get tired. And I dealt with a lot of nerve pain. And these are things that I still deal with to this day, even 12 years later. But I've learned a lot about my body and about ways to minimize that. So I'm very, very fortunate. But as time went on and I started to learn more about GBS and met all these other people, I realized, it affects people of various degrees. And so some people are paralyzed, like I was. Only about 30% actually will end up on a ventilator. The rest will only deal with paralysis, up to their chest or up to their legs, even. So it depends on how severe the case is. And then other people, they don't recover. And that it's a very sad truth about GBS, is that not everyone does recover from GBS like I did. And so when I look back at my journey and my story, I have a lot of survivor's guilt because I recovered and I had such a great outcome, and not everybody does. But that also sparked a fire in me to, bring awareness to what GBS is. And so many people don't know what it is. A lot of people have never heard of it. A lot of doctors, a lot of nurses have never even dealt with it. And I can say that, they didn't really always understand how to take care of me when I was in the hospital. They didn't realize that I was dealing with all this severe pain, and they would just kind of toss me around in bed, and there was just so much that I had to share, and I had this unique perspective to share after I went through what I did. And that's when I knew, after I recovered, I knew that I had a story to share, and I could bring awareness to GBS, and I could help other people going through the disease and give them that hope.
And you are doing that. So just before we get into that part of the discussion, I know you became active again in the fitness and training, all the stuff. And is there any protocol that you specifically followed post, the recovery, and that actually worked for you better to really get back your muscles, your health, your immune system, kicking back in gear? And another question to that, or the second part of that, would be, is there a risk for it to actually relapse on you, like to, I guess, a remission case type of thing?
Yeah, so I got into strength training. So when I was doing the rehab therapy, I was physiotherapist, and it was basically like strength training is what I was doing, and so regaining that muscle. And then from there, there was various different things that I got into through either my physiotherapy recommendations or through my doctor. So yoga was one. I was very, very stiff and achy just from everything that I went through, and so yoga did wonders for my body. Strength training was great for the building of the muscles. And then I got into running, which was a personal goal of mine. I never ran before GBS, but it was something, I want to be able to play tag with my daughter. And I remember when I started, it was so awkward at first, and it just felt strange because my legs weren't 100%, but I did it anyways, and gradually improved to be able to run 5 kilometers every several days. So running became a huge passion of mine, as did strength training. I got into fitness, got into the best shape of my life, which was amazing because I didn't always believe that I would get there. But the body is incredible. I mean, we can go through things like GBS where you're completely paralyzed and come back and get to where I was. And so I wanted my story as well to just show other people that, you can go from zero to where I am. And from there, that's when I got certified and actually started teaching other people about, how to gain strength and how to get back into fitness, or get into fitness if it's for the first time, and anybody can do it.
Well, the people are watching or listening right now, I think GPS or not, they not GPS, GBS or not, they get the concept of hope here. Because, by the way, I think this relate to all the diseases out there and illnesses out there, and everybody is suffering for whatever it is. There is hope, and there's not. There's other people just like you out there that are going through it or have conquered it, and they're out, trying to do their best to share similar stories of success, and just, being better, and really doing the work. Now, that inspired you to write a book. So the name of the book is
Life Support: Surviving Guillain-Barre Syndrome. So it's basically a journey of my very first symptoms through the hospital, and then going back in time with my childhood, and then going in the future with my recovery. And it's a very detailed account of what I went through, mostly in ICU. Obviously, that was the hardest part of my journey, and how I overcame that, and how I ended up turning it into something so beautiful, and turning it into, this horrible thing happened to me. Instead, now it's one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. And it put me on a new path, and it gave me a passion in life, and it brought me to where I am today.
I have to say this. There are a few people I've had on shows that, if my network was bigger enough, we would have made a movie about those those cases. And I promise this: if when we make it big, there will be a movie section where we will look at these things, because your story can literally fit perfectly in a movie script that actually can really turn, people to excitement. And it will be a lot of maybe drama piece of it. It will be a lot of nostalgic stuff, but it will also be a lot of hope and positivity in it, and inspiration in there. So, listen, if anyone beats me to it, more, that's okay, folks. But Holly's book, should have a fair shot at it, sooner than later, and definitely, it's a story that could be projected to the world. And because, I mean, not everybody's gonna get to it through my network here, or through the different places. I mean, you are viral in a lot of areas. Your videos are all over, and hopefully people can check them out. And by the way, you can check out her way, her information later on, and follow her on Instagram. I'll have all that on the description of the show, so you can connect with Holly, and check out her her journey and work. But certainly it's just a great thing. Now, I'm assuming the book is available in all the standard platforms.
Yep,
Amazon.
it is. Yes. Yep. Amazon, Indigo, Chapters.
Your daughter
Barnes
is
and
how
Noble.
old now?
My daughter is now 12 years old.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
wow.
wild. It's crazy. I mean, 12 years ago doesn't seem like that long ago to me, but she's all grown up now. It seems she's actually taller than me.
Okay. Well,
So
but she knows all the stuff, and she's
she
seeing you do
knows
it.
She's seen all the videos. My recovery videos have gone viral many, many times. And so she's seen that. She's seen herself in the videos. Obviously, she doesn't remember, but she knows every detail. I've talked to her about so much about what went on in ICU and what I overcame. And so it's like she feels like as if she was right there with me, and she knows every part of the story. And it's given us this really incredible bond that I don't think we would have had we not gone through GBS together.
Well, I'm not going to thank GBS for that.
I can.
No, but yeah, I mean, listen, but the fact is, you're right. I mean, but see, that's your positivity. You see that it happened and there's a reason behind it and it's working, right? But the fact of the matter is, one thing that happened that your daughter was too young to actually go through the pain that you were going through. At least that it's one thing to watch it later than going through it. Like, for example, your mom had, your mom was obviously older, so she can absorb that pain differently than if your daughter that at the time she was like maybe 5 or 6 or 10, or at this age right now. I mean, that would be a crucial age for that.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there are people out there today that are going through this with kids and that may be older. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I really had to do that is, just find the hidden gifts and be grateful for certain aspects of my journey like that, that my daughter was so young. So, and then my daughter was there with us. She was like this little bright light in such a dark time. I can't imagine if she wasn't in ICU, just bringing laughter into that room when we were going through such a hard time. And so I know that, a lot of people believe everything happens for a reason, but not everybody does. And you don't always have to believe that, this happened to me for a reason, but you can try to find a reason. You can say, okay, well, this is something positive that came out of that. And that's what I see, not only just with my daughter and the bond that we've created, but in my entire life. I mean, it's made me so much more ambitious. It's made me go after a lot more goals. It's made me try new things and be more adventurous. And these are things that I would have never had or gone through had I not experienced GBS. So it's definitely changed my life for the better. And that's something that I choose to focus on.
Well, you have a different sense of appreciation for life.
Exactly.
I mean, anyone that had trauma in their life would probably relate to you better than folks that take it for granted, right? Only when you go through pain and to suffering, whatever that may be, that's when you start really appreciating, even financially. Some people get through tough, hard times, in financials. And that's when they realize like all the blessings they might had, or on things like how other people may have had it rough. So things, and that's the least amount. I mean, financial stress is one thing. I mean, but nothing beats when your body is the one that is actually getting afflicted, because money can go and can come back, but health can be very difficult to regain, and if it does, it's a lot of work, and years go by. But I love your perspective. I love your vision of positivity, and you're projecting that to the world. Now I do want to go back to one thing. Now, you were working when this whole thing happened. Was there any type of I mean, were you able to go back to your career path, or you changed it all over again, to a different path?
No, I was able to go back to my job again. I was very fortunate because I was in Canada. And so in Canada, we get actually a year off for maternity leave. And so I was lucky that, I had that year off anyways, and I was able to get disability through my employer. So very fortunate there. And I was able to have my recovery and just focus on it. And then after that, I was able to go back to my job and get back into human resources. From there, I've branched out and done tons of different stuff. So I've done fitness training, and I wrote the book and do a lot of speaking. And so I've kind of just gone on many different paths from that experience.
Well, listen, you were young, you're still young, you still have the energy, you still want to do a lot of things, and you have plenty of stuff to share, to give, right? I mean, your experiences across the board can be very well, accepted around the world. And by the way, you wrap, the idea of like, a whole year of maternity leave. We don't get that here.
I know.
We don't get that here. I'm sorry. I mean, some countries may not even have any. Some countries may have better. I don't know, but I just know that our FMLA is like 120 days, and you're lucky if you keep that. So,
yeah.
But so yeah. I mean, listen. whole Canada. I have to say so. But listen, I mean, it is. I mean, we have some fun here, but again, this also shows like how it's amazing. We don't look at it from that kind of concept. Like the system sometimes, can make a difference in life of that. In this case, and there are parts of the world where people have the healthcare is so bad. They just die because there's nobody to take care of them in the first place. And again, I
Absolutely.
mean, from a religious perspective, everybody goes in due time, but still, I mean, you can still think that everybody has a hope for someone to have the care and at least get the due diligence process. And there are places in the world that don't even get close. It's unfortunate, but that's reality.
Yeah, and the GBS affects people all over the world in many, many cultures and countries and all ages. I mean, I know people that are as young as 2, 3 years old. And I met a man from Peru, actually, that he literally didn't even go to the hospital and he recovered at home. And I can't even imagine what that would be like to not have a healthcare system to help you through that. And he actually recovered on his own completely.
Well, I mean, listen, there's resilience. There is, I mean,
Absolutely.
circumstances are different, and the mind also plays and again, the support system.
Yep.
Whoever was there, I'm sure it was difficult, maybe even worse and harder than you had it. I mean, only he can probably describe what that looked like, and it's hard. Now, I have to say, you hear the stories. I'm sure it gets very sensitive to you, like it gets emotional when you actually in face of other people that and I am talking to you now. It's becoming a regular practice for you, but I'm sure that it's still emotionally, strong in there. And when you talk about it, I can feel it. I can hear it from you when you talk about it, how it's so deep in there. Now you've gone through all this. You're doing this. What's next for you in
Well,
your
right
journey?
now I'm actually very, very pleased that I'm a part of the GBS CIDP Foundation. So the CIDP or GBS CIDP Foundation here in Canada is basically an organization that helps people that are going through GBS. And then CIDP is another disorder related to GBS. And so for me, that is such a huge passion of mine, is getting to bring awareness, run campaigns to raise money for GBS survivors and for supports. And then my favorite, which it's wild to think that this is my favorite part, but it is to go into hospitals and visit patients. And I've actually gone into ICUs, the same ICU that I was in as well, and walked into hospital rooms and, just said, I've been where you have. And I know it feels like you're not going to get out of there, but you have to have hope because I was once where you are and look at me now.
Just that in its own
Hmm.
can make a difference. I mean, if and people will relate to that. I mean,
Oh,
because when they see you standing there and they know that you were in their shoes, they're going to be like, well, I have a shot. I can do better. And
exactly.
that in itself can make a difference in how the mind sets. If the mind sees the positive and it gets, really encouraged, I mean, it's going to give whatever fight that it needs to do to make it better. But if there is no hope, to your point, and people just lose it, they basically collapse, and that's the end of it. They just basically they lose the will to live, and that's not something you want. So
Yeah.
again, thank you for doing that, and I mean, chapeau, hats, whatever, kudos, any other descriptive here, is yours for the work you do. And I always admire people that give back in this world. And, no matter what well, everybody's going through something in their life and always learn, from that and see like, when you see somebody else, think about them, think about you.
Hmm.
And see that and sometimes there's always someone that's going through tough times in one way or the other, if not them, somebody in their family. So
Yeah.
be considerate, be nice to people, and just help whenever you can. And hopefully, we can never say this because at the end of the day, illness is always going to be part of life, and there's
Hmm.
different levels of them and multiples. You hear about new things all the time, and these new diagnoses and whatever. But at the end of the day, there are people that go through them, they survive, and the best thing is that when you guys, like in your case, you went out and did all the work to bring it to others and helping others to be better. And you're doing all the stuff that you love, which is just awesome. I mean, and
Hmm.
plus you have a great bond with your daughter. And that's also, like I'm telling you, it's a book, it's a movie. I mean, it's definitely a movie, you know. All right. So we're actually coming out to the end of the show here, but what would be some last words of wisdom you want to share with our audiences today?
I think I want to go back to that quote that I talked about, that courage doesn't always roar quote. So I'll repeat it. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at day's end saying, I'll try again tomorrow. And I think that that's so important for anybody going through anything in their life. You know, you just have to keep moving forward. And for me, that reading that quote when I was in ICU was very profound for me, because I remember at the moment, I didn't feel like I was strong. I didn't feel like I was going to get through ICU. I didn't feel like I was going to overcome GBS. And people kept telling me, you're so strong, Holly, you can do this. And I felt ashamed that I didn't feel that way. But when I read that quote, it was like, you know what? Courage doesn't always roar. It's sometimes just this quiet voice. It doesn't always have to be this like, you know what? I got this. I'm going to overcome this. I can do this. Sometimes you're going to try with tears in your eyes saying, you know, I can just try again tomorrow. And that's what I did. And that's really how I got to where I am today. It wasn't easy. It wasn't this drastic before and after that you see of my recovery. It was, you know, all these tiny little accomplishments along the way. And I think that's so important for people to just hold on to those tiny accomplishments that you're making, celebrate those tiny wins, just keep trying again tomorrow and never give up.
Love it. And you know what? That's the strongest message you can give people. I mean, hope is real. Every day is a new day, and one step at a time. You know, you don't have to do it all in one, lump sum. And I think that's a mistake, a lot of us make, where we want everything today, yesterday. Yes. And, we use the expression like, when you need it, yesterday. Well, I mean, we get that rush, we get that, urgency, but there are things that are not going to happen that way. And
you got to put
small victories.
For sure.
Yeah, that's it. Like they say, like you can lose a battle, but you can still win the war. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, those daily battles can be like won, or maybe lost, exactly. But it's the picture that gives you the final outcome, and it only takes it step by step. Like I'm gonna start saying step by step. I'm dating myself back, but it's funny you said something earlier. you stated something funny earlier to say like some people, you were lucky because you were younger and people saw the story, and someone that was 50 and 60, I was like, I'm done. They're not even going to look at me.
and I mean, that's not the case for everybody by any means.
I'm
but yeah.
But it's amazing, right? Well, yeah. What we want people to just really, guys, know this, that you are who you are. You are an advocate, for yourself, and people out there. And circumstances vary, and hopefully that you will get, if God forbid something happens to anyone watching or listening right now, that you'll get the right, treatment, the right folks to actually support you and really guide you through whatever you're going through. And I wish everybody a healthier life and a better life. And that's all I can say, at least from my end here. And that's about it. Holly, it was such a pleasure. And, you took me through that journey, and I'm telling you, like I'm just thinking about that movie thing right now. I'm like, but it's a great story, and it's real. And thank you so much for the work you do.
Thank you so much for having me on and just giving me the opportunity to, share my story and bring awareness for GBS and bring some hope to whatever you're going through in your life right now.
Thank you, and there you have it, folks. Hope is your key here, and take it for what it's worth. I'm Hurricane Age. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new guest. Bye for now.
There's a lot of talk all over the internet these days about the remarkable benefits of Carbon-60, and baby boomers are especially excited about it. Whatever generation you're in, if you want more energy, better health, and a boost in vitality, we invite you to try Greska's Carbon-60, a stunning development in free radical destruction. Being much smaller in size than conventional antioxidants derived from fruits and vegetables, it is far more bioavailable to quickly mend the toxin-crippled cells in your body. Greska's Carbon-60 is the only C60 product that is made without the use of undesirable solvents. The only one. Greska's Carbon-60 was developed by a brilliant NASA carbon scientist, and 95% report positive results from this Nobel Prize-winning technology in just 4 days. Visit c-60.com. That's c-60.com or call 720-600-6040.